clear it. Coming from me. What's going on? You don't have any money. You don't have any media. You don't have any. They charge you to make it out. Yeah, my phone locked the door.
Okay, if I can have your attention. Everybody, point down for 1 minute. Because I know that I know two things. The two things are, one is everybody can continue to eat. No pleasure, because there's plenty left. And then two, I know a lot of folks have things that they want to share about Jack and want to give those opportunities. And so with that in mind, let's get started. And Diane would like to have the first word here, so please pay attention.
Go ahead, Daughter number 2. Right. I'm daughter number 2, but closer. I can't imagine you guys can't hear me. I have my father's voice and it just sort of carries. But again, on behalf of the family, cannot thank you all enough for coming out and showing your love and support. And let's face it, Dad would have been thrilled to see soup and sandwiches, right? And then he'd have hit the dessert bar and we'd have all been saying, no, Dad, you can't have it. No, you can't have it. But he absolutely loved soup. This is a man who loves soup. And so he would have been so happy. The other thing that he loved was fellowship. Because my father's ministry was about people coming together and people working together, and as he used to say, people eating together. And so Dad would be so happy. But I just wanted to take a minute to just, kind of say, we as a family decided that instead of flowers, we wanted contributions to go to the Sanctuary Endowment Fund. And I think this would have been very important to my father. Dad loved history, and he loved old things. I think that's why he kept so much stuff. Old wood, he liked old nails, he liked, a lot of old things. But Dad loved history, and he loved the sanctuary. But Dad also loved progress. And my father was very much about don't get stuck in the past. The past is there to provide us with examples, right? Sometimes of what we shouldn't do, sometimes of what went well. But for the most part, my father was very much about meeting the needs of the people and not being stuck in, Jack did this, Jack did that, right? Because if that were to happen, that one might upset him. He would say, take it down, move it, do whatever needs to be done to move forward and to meet the needs of the people. But I think that the Sanctuary Endowment Fund is something that would be so meaningful to him. And that is the idea that as we move forward, we are also taking care of the history of this church. And this church has a very rich history. And it's one that Dad was so proud of. Oh my gosh, homecomings, right? I mean, that was an all-day event. And Dad absolutely loved, he loved this church and he loved the people in this church. And I think that he would want to preserve the sanctuary, to make sure the sanctuary was taken care of in generations to come, but he would never, ever want that to hold us back from building and meeting the needs of our congregation and of the future congregations. Thank you.
I'll go ahead and do this. I wanted to share something with you that has been very meaningful to me and to Ann over these last 2.5 years. Every once in a while you get a phone call and somebody leaves a message And so it is a message like this that was left 2.5 years ago on our phone, and I'm going to play it, at least part of it for you. You'll recognize the voice.
5:21 p.m. Hello, Jim and Ann. This is Jack Pilger. I'm just calling out of the blue, just to find out how you're doing. I haven't seen you, heard from you, anything, and I just wanted to give you a quick call.
We've had that on our phone for 2.5 years. And well, I would just like to share that Jack was incredibly meaningful to me personally, and to me and Ann. He co-officiated our wedding in 1996. We were members of Ebenezer and sang in the choir, did Sunday school with Wayne and Mary and Paul and Nancy. So we go back, our roots go back a long way with Jack. But anyway, he's a very special man. He mentored me into the ministry, and I'll be forever grateful. So anyway, that's my part.
I have been asked to share a story from Reba Shackelford. She had to leave to go to her son's wedding, and she wanted everyone to know this really sweet story. She's a piano teacher. She plays the piano for us, and she has tons of students, 5 classes, 70 kids, and had a recital planned. And all of a sudden, something came up, and she couldn't use the recital venue. So she came to Jack and said, "Could I rent the church to have my recital?" And he said, "No, absolutely not." And he went over and pulled out the drawer and got a key out and just gave her the key. He said, "Here, it's yours." And I think she's been doing it here ever since.
I would like to thank God and the Pilger family for sharing Jack with us. He has been a real blessing. Jack shared every detail of his life with us when he was pastor, every detail. But the one thing he never told us was whether or not he was a Cubbies fan. And I will forever be mystified by that. What I did want to do is come up here, and I know that it's horrible when people come up and read poems, but I'm fairly certain this is one of Jack's favorite poems. Partly because of the number of times he read it to us and handed it out to us to take home and think about. It's called "Don't Quit." When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and debts are high, and you want to smile but have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure turns about when he might have won if he had stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You might succeed with another blow. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup, and he learned too late when the night slipped down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tints of cloud of doubt, and you never know, and you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worse that you mustn't quit. Thank you, Jack.
My name's Larry Tate, and I'm a cousin through marriage to Jack. I want to tell you, sweet man. Never heard him say a bad word about anybody. He's one of my blessings that God promised me when he saved me. I was born and raised down in Miami, Florida, where Jack and Joan got married. She went to nursing school, and I walked off and left the Lord when I was about 23, 24 years old. And I stayed down in the bottom of that ocean of sin for a long time. Longer. Sin can keep you longer than you will stay. Well, the Lord saved me in '95, and I joined the First Baptist Church of Woodstock. 6 months later, he used me to start a banquet ministry there for having servers for all the banquets. And I got close with Johnny and the rest of the people from doing his wife's ladies' night out. But so he invited me to come to a non-denominational pastor's prayer breakfast that they had every Thursday. So I started going. I'm bad with names. I got to wear a tag to remember who I am. One morning after we got through eating, Jack and Johnny Hunt were sitting there talking about going on a cruise. And they were, what boat, this, that, and Jack mentioned, well, it's my wife's anniversary of graduating from the School of Nursing down there at Jackson Memorial Hospital. I said, well, I know that hospital. I was born there and spent most of my young youth in there getting things done in the emergency room. Well, I said, did you grow up down in Miami, or did you live some other place and met Joan? Because I know this was a magnet school that women would come down there to the nurses training. Well, he said, no, I lived down there. I said, well, what high school did you go to? He said, well, I went to Jackson High. I said, well, oh, I know that. That's where I went to high school too, but you were a little bit before me, but my sister went there. He said, what's her name? I said, her name was Janet Tate. He looked at me and he said, do you have an aunt called Dorothy? I said, you mean Dot? He said, do you have an Uncle Jethro? I said, Jess? He said, is your mother's name Mary Lee? I said, yes, my eyes got bigger. He said, is your dad named Roy? I said, he said, guess what? We're cousins. Johnny said, y'all better quit talking, you're gonna find out your brother. When God saved me, he said, Larry, I've got armloads of blessings to pour out on you, but I can't because you're disobedient. Come and ask me, I'll forgive you, I'll restore you, and I'll begin to bless your life. Through one of his blessings was Jack, because I was here, I had been up here since 1964. I escaped South Florida in 64. Had no family up here. God put me with Jack. My family did not believe that God had changed my life. He got home, immediately called Aunt Dorothy down in Florida and said, surprise, guess who I met at a pastor's prayer breakfast this morning? That's when my family really started believing that God had done work in my life. I was not that same person that I used to be. That's why I say Jack Pilger was a blessing, because not only did I give him as my family, all the Pilgers up here, blessing. Come over for Thanksgiving. Have you got any place to go for Christmas? Whatever. And I was fortunate enough to be able to be with Jack just about every Thursday. When he got where he couldn't drive, they would come and drop him off, and I would take him home. And one of the funny things, him being in the Coast Guard and having to polish brass, he loved brass. They have a clothes closet there. It's like a mini Goodwill there. And we would go in there every day when we get finished with prayer breakfast, and he was forever picking up grass. Well, Joan said, gives him a little bit of money and said, now watch him. Well, I would take the things that he picked out and I'd take them up to the counter and I'd say, here, put them behind the counter. By the time we got there, Jack had forgot about it. But he loved brass. But once again, God's word is true and faithful. You can count on him. When he said, I'll give you I've had armloads of blessings. That's just one of the blessings that God gave me, was Jack and the family. Pilgers love you guys, love you. His mother and my Aunt Dorothy were sisters, and she was married to my uncle. So my mother's brothers, so that's how. And when you married into the Robbins family, all the rest all came right along with it. Not just Joan, not just her kids, but we went through every problem or trouble they had. It affected our family because we were there for them. We were just, that's the way it was back then. Thank you for letting me get up here and talk about the blessing.
Okay, let's see here. Let's stay on point. You listen to the politicians. Anyway, where it all starts, my name is Paul, and by the way,
Speak it to the microphone, Paul.
where's the...
It's on your left.
Okay, my name's Paul, and it all starts out very interesting, Jay. I'll start out by just saying I'm Catholic, and I'm from New York. When I first went to Job Seekers, Jack asked me where I was from. I said, New York. He says, how long have you been a Methodist? I said, I'm Catholic. From that point on, curiosity really piqued with Jack. He wanted to know everything there was about a New Yorker and being Catholic. So we gravitated together, and he always said to me, and we agreed on it, he said, I want people to laugh. I want people to laugh. I want tears to be tears of laughter rather than tears of pain. I'll never forget him saying that. That rings for me today. So meeting at Job Seekers was an experience. I was asked to come to a service. The group got together for job service and said because Jack would show up as the pastor or as a chaplain for all the people who were looking for jobs, to come to a church where Jack was the pastor. And I said, all right, I raised my hand, volunteered. And right away going through my mind is I'm going to drive south of Georgia, or south of Atlanta. I'm going to wind up in the country someplace with a crocodile's walking across the road. That's what Jack's church is, because everybody said he had this cute little white church. So 3 weeks went by, and finally I walked up and had the courage to ask one of the fellows in Johnson, where is Jack's church? And they said it's on Fox Road in Johnson. I live a quarter of a mile. I did. Well, that started a whole relationship with Jack. There are a number of things I just wanted to point out that really resonated with me because it surfaced as I was trying to think about Jack. One of those things is Burger King coffee. Now, when we could drive, he would have a full cup of Burger King coffee and insist I pull over to Burger King. Because he had to pull into Burger King to tap off the coffee for about 3 inches. And this was a whole scenario I went through with Jack. And then, we talked about a cruise. And I said, Jack, what would you like to go on a cruise in? What kind of ship? And he said, I prefer to go in Corral. And I don't think they make a ship. But that's what Jack was, if anybody knows. The Golden Corral was literally his second home. Okay? Now, it takes us into Bill, which is interesting. The first time I met Jack, I saw Bill. I said, Jack, Chicago, CIA, undercover, okay, nobody wants to know who Jack is. But we flew down with 3 other pastors, with Jack, Catholic, New York, with 3 Methodist ministers, rented a van, drove down to Marathon Keys, and in the van, it so happened that the people that were with us, or had rented the van before us, thought they left the luggage in the van. So we're driving down, I got 3 pastors in the back, I got Jack over here in the front, and before you know it, he gets a phone call. It said, we need to pull over. The police are gonna come and see us. Where are you? Jack's handing me the phone. I'm driving. I don't know what to do. We pulled over the side of the road. Bottom line was they left their luggage in our van by mistake, but they said it was stolen. And I never saw Jack get out and talk to this police officer, calm, cool, and collected, that we got back in the van. And I think he converted it from his was about. So that was a trip to the Keys that I'll never ever forget. I would wound up. Bill was kind enough to invite us on his boat. You know, what, 1,000 traps? I don't know how many traps. It was ridiculous. It's like the national debt or something. But we got on Bill's boat. Jack had a cup of coffee in his hand. And Sam, as a matter of fact, I got a picture of him. The minute he got on his boat, he went down the stairs, down the line. The engine started. We're out for about 3.5 to 4 hours. No Jack. So I go down. He's sleeping. Took a picture. It was so dark, the picture never came out. So as soon as the boat pulled in, the engine stopped. Up comes Jack. And apparently he did that all the time. He'd go downstairs and sleep on up. He said, wasn't that a great ride? Did you enjoy that? So there are so many things that I could talk about Jack, but I know, by the way, Joan, I don't know if you know it, but he did have a love affair with somebody else. Did you know that? Yeah, it was called a copy machine. Oh my God, oh my God. We have job seekers over here on a Wednesday morning. I don't care if one person showed up. We've got 500 copies. He had a passion for copies. He was just making copies, making copies. Potbelly stoves. We like potbelly stoves. Anytime we went by someplace and there was a potbelly stove out somewhere, whether it was in the garbage, in the junk, somebody's neighborhood, we had to stop and have examine those potbelly jars. Pieces of paper. Whoever said that? Yeah. I mean, he was a collection of pieces of paper. One day I went over to his house to sit down and talk with him. He says, Paul, sit down. He said, I want to show you something. I said, you got to be kidding. He says, it's in here somewhere. Well, 2 days later, I'm sitting there. He said, I'll find it. Don't leave. I'll find it, I promise. Okay, and I'm going to leave with this. This is really an incredible story. At 7:30 in the morning, I would go with my wife to St. Peter Chanel, if anybody knows the church of St. Peter Chanel. It's in Roswell. I'm Catholic, so I go to 7:30 Mass. 8:30, service would start there with Jack. 7:30 Mass, I go up, I receive communion. As soon as communion was over, I'd leave. I get in my car, I'd be here for 8:30. So finally, one day, Father Frank walks out to me. He says, Paul, he stops me in the halls. He says, you know, Mass is not over. He says, I know. He says, where can you possibly be going that's so important other than God's house? So I had to think quick. I said, well, I'm going to a summer place. So he said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm going to the Methodist church. He says, you're going where? I said, well, there I come here for perspiration, there for inspiration. Okay? But the combined the two was, I got Father Frank and Jack together, and the three of us went out to lunch. And the bottom line was when they dedicated that church, Jack was in the front pew. I'm trying to remember the exact words, but Father Frank could not believe it. You converted a Methodist to a Catholic. Well, that almost shared. God bless, he's wonderful.
We're not closing the curtain, we're just closing the kitchen staff off, so they can continue to work in private.
the pastor asked me to read something. I loved it, you understand me. Tom Burleson was a member of this church I think he's a member of the church now, but he was in here for a long time. He can't be here, and he asked that this get read. So I'll do the best I can to tell you what's on his heart. Tom says, I think Tom's taking care of his mom, isn't that right?
Yes, he's in North Carolina, living with his mother.
And so he couldn't be here today. And so Tom said, I deeply regret that although I'm unable to physically attend the celebration of this fine man's wonderful life, I'm here in spirit. The first time I met Jack was on a rainy Easter Sunday morning in 2004. I'd come to realize that there was something lacking in my life, and I knew that it was a church and a church family. My dad had recently passed, and I was amazed at the love and support from the church that he had when he was a member and that I had grown up in, and I missed it. One Sunday morning in our travels, we passed Ebenezer, and I saw a classic Cadillac. Picture down here. Can you see it up here? What year was that? 55. Hands for 55. 53. Anyway, he saw a classic Cadillac with a front tag that said Methodist Minister. I told Barbara that any pastor who drove that was fine in my book. And I'd like to attend an upcoming Easter service there. I was reluctant to go to a larger church because I was just starting over in my journey and I wanted to start small. Easter Sunday came around and I saw on the sign that there was an 8:30 service, so I went. As I entered the sanctuary, I noticed there was no one there. It was very close to starting time, so I thought that it was a bit unusual due to the number of cars on the lot. I could hear voices coming from the fellowship hall. I said to myself, I've tried to attend, and if I could sneak out unseen, things would be all right. Then someone wandered in from the fellowship hall and saw me. I thought this was funny. She retreated, and I heard her say, somebody's out there. No, I don't know who it is. I was stuck. A minute later, a kindly gentleman came out and introduced himself as Jack Pilger and said, come on in. Let's have a cup of coffee and a donut. And we'll start in a little while. Within 15 minutes, I felt like I was home and welcomed. As Ebenezer had grown, I looked back and I smiled at how quaint those times seemed. During those early years, I cannot count the number of times Jack introduced me to his son, Jim. I came to learn later that it was Jim's wife, Wendy, who had spied on me that Easter morning. I also remember how many times he would call me and say, quote, you have a truck, don't you? The warmth and Christian love that this man exuded will live on through all who crossed his path. I'm honored to have known him. He made a difference in my life. Thank you, Jack Pilger. You will be missed, but fondly remembered. And I don't know what he means by this, but he's got a couple of quotes here. One is, maybe it was his favorite song by Johnny Cash. I'm not going to sing it. Ain't no grave gonna hold my body down by Johnny Cash. Well done, good and faithful servant. Sincerely, Tom Burleson.
My name is Ken Futch, and when I was first married, in our first year of marriage, I was unemployed. Times were tough for Linda and I. Needed to find a new church because the one we were attending was too far. So at the time we lived in Treetop Apartments, which was near Vitals. The post office was in downtown Vitals. Linda came home one day, she says, I found a new church for us. Methodist church. I said, where? Because I grew up as a Methodist. She says, right here in Vitals. I said, wait a minute, you got a little rinky-dink place? I bet they're handling snakes. I said, no, I don't think I would. Well, let's just go try it out. So we go this first Sunday. Absolutely, we were completely amazed because it seemed like somebody had prepped him for what our situation was. For the entire sermon, it was just like he was speaking to us explicitly. And we came out and looked at each other and said, can you believe that? I will go back. The next Sunday, we're there. Again, it was like he was speaking just to us. We thought, this is strange. We go back, and for the third Sunday, he did the same thing. Now, after that, it became more normal. But I knew that God was pointing me to a place that I needed to be. Jack touched everybody and touched people quickly. It was so obvious how authentic he was. When I found out about his history, down in South Florida, 5 kids, and decided, no education, and decided he wanted to be a Methodist minister. Say what? Gonna move to South Georgia from Miami, live out in the country, go to Valdosta. I knew immediately this man was not getting into the ministry for an easy life. This man was giving up income he'd been used to for a tougher time. And that really resonated with me. Jack had the unique ability to see in people gifts that they had that they did not know they had. He made people better by simply being around them and talking to them. He would bring you in. He got me to tithe immediately. Of course, wasn't much to start with. But I realized that at Little Church of Vinings, they needed every penny. That was one poor place. So he got everyone involved. As everyone who's gone to church here knows how he does. He will get you involved in what he's doing. And he believes in you. You know that he sees the best in other people on a regular basis. I spent so much time in his office talking to him, trying to understand more. And he taught me so much from a theological perspective. I remember asking him questions, and I would say, well, what's the answer to that? He said, well, that's sort of, nobody really knows. I said, well, I've seen preachers who got all the answers. So let me tell you something. Anytime anyone ever tells you that they got all the answers, they hadn't heard all the questions. I thought, now that makes sense. And I would say to him, a lot of things I just don't understand. Some of these things God does, I just don't understand. He said, well, let's say this. Any God that we could understand completely wouldn't be much of a God. We will never understand everything. It was so inspiring to be around him. And he would also bring in other people. He had a connection with Emory. And he made those professors work. He'd bring them over Wednesday night, have them give their little sermons and things. Absolutely fascinating. But then there was the other aspect, and that was his family. Joan, she never knew how many people were going to eat a meal. Jack never told her who was, they just come in the house, you know. And she always seemed to have a way. It made no difference how many people was in, there was always enough to eat. Linda said one of her secrets was she had some instant mashed potatoes that she, and a lot of salad, you know, but there was always enough food for everyone. And you could see the love of God in Jack's family. And you know that God was working with him and working with his family. I don't think any of us could ask any more than to have people, when they look at us, say, I see God. And that's the way it was with Jack. when you looked at him, when you were around him, you could see God in the way he lived his life, the way it impacted his family, and the way it impacted everyone who had the opportunity in life to be able to spend time with that man. He was truly a great man and a great gift to all of us from God. Amen. Thank you.
I guess it's my time. My name is Alicia McComb, and I'm a member here at Ebenezer Methodist Church. The reason I'm here is because of Marilyn Grizzard, which was the piano player here at our church, and Jack Pilger. I have never in my life received so much godly love that Jack Pilger gave my husband and myself. Jack was wonderful to all, and as Ed and I said, we have never heard that man say one ugly word about anybody. Now, if you sat in some of his meetings, and we would be discussing a lot, and there may be a few voices would rise, he would say, it's okay, we'll talk about that tomorrow. So we've been in a lot of meetings, and you always knew that Jack would settle those things. I just wanted to share something with you, and everyone in here I know are Christians, but I just got off of a cruise, of a 10-day cruise. And I told the girls and Joan about this the other night when I went by the house. I did not have a telephone nor email nor anything because I was on the cruise into New England. The minute we got back to Boston, I had not had my telephone on. My husband had sent me an email, a text, but I had not even gotten that. And you know how when you have your cell phone and you have to unlock it, my telephone had Jack Pilger's face on my phone. Now, is that a godly thing? Jack Pilger wanted me to know that he had gone to live in heaven without anybody telling me. It was what Wendy had put on Facebook about losing a wonderful man. And his picture was there. I had not turned that phone on, anything, until we got back to the States. And I told the girls that the other night, and they said, you know what, Alicia? Daddy wanted himself to tell you it was time to go. And I believe that. If nobody doesn't believe it, I do. Because in God's way, in the way we live today, we live within God's learnings and what we do. Everybody in this church has been loved the Pilger family. They've always been here for us. We've always been a part of their family. And not only did Jack Pilger preach at this church and live here 24/7, you never came by this church without his car outside, day or night. Poor Joan, she knew he was at the church. But not only was Jack Pilger our minister, Joan Pilger was our minister too. Joan was beside that man every day of his life. And he was here, she was with him. And even at the end, when Jack was starting to get a little bit of dementia, Joan would lead him and let him do what he wanted to do. Jack was here for many years, and some people said, well, you know, Jack's beginning to get dementia, whatever. Yes, we knew that. But our feeling here at this church, Jack Pilger will be at this church until the day he tells us he's ready to go. In 2008, we had a little hallway in the fellowship hall, and I was the PPR chairman at that time. He came to me and said, Alicia, I think it's time. He stayed with us for one more year, and that's when he retired. But we knew here at Ebenezer that these doors would not have been opened as many years as they had been if it had not been for Jack and John. And at this time, John, thank you for supporting him. We love you all.
It's hard to do. Jack Pilger's one of my favorite men, if not my favorite man. My name's Jack Beach. It's my wife's sister sitting here. Known Jack for 21 years. I grew up in the Palm Beaches. Jack grew up in Miami. I went to Palm Beach High School. He went to Jackson High. His football team always beat ours. We weren't that good at football. And I didn't know him then. He's a few years older than I am. But we lived in Florida. I grew up in South Florida, and I moved up here to Atlanta. You know, met my wife here on Valentine's Day, as a matter of fact. And we moved around in a marriage. And we lived in Sarasota the last time. We moved back to Atlanta. And I had a job as a stockbroker, financial planner. The job vaporized the day we came back up here and I was going to work. We had 3 sons in college. It's kind of a lot of cash flow going out at that point in time. And somehow in 1995, right about this time, November, I discovered the Atlanta Job Seekers Ministry. So I went to that ministry and I met Jack. And I was pretty down and depressed. I actually had had a couple really dark days before that. And he brought out that poem, Don't Quit. He said, Jack, I want you to have this. And we talked and we counseled, and he knew, okay, you know, you're from Florida, and I like fishing, and he liked the water, and we liked all those things. And so we got to know one another. And, you know, I was involved, and I'm still involved with Atlanta Job Seekers, and the Cobb Job Seekers, and we had another job networking meeting, the SAM, Sales and Marketing Seekers at Roswell United Methodist Church, which I led. It was for sales and marketing, but anybody came. And Jack would always come to all of these meetings, and he was our chaplain. And he would do breakout sessions at all of the different sessions. And just prince of a fellow, man of God. And, you know, he would invite us to come here to this church, which we would come for the barbecues and for the various events and things like that. And when we did Simpsonwood, we had an annual Simpsonwood picnic, which he always headed up and organized. Some of us helped with that. There's a fair number of job seekers that have been here. I remember your face, Ken, but I didn't remember until you started talking. He's come and talk to us at the Job Seekers Ministry. We do have a Christian program, somebody who gives their life and testimony and history. We've led people to God there that didn't know the people. And Jack was an integral part of that. And I can remember, you know, just knowing him and trusting him, and he's helped me in real times of need in the past. And behind every great man, there's a wonderful woman. That's Joan. And you should be sainthood. All the things that you've had to deal with your mother and your daughter Susan, and of course Jack. And just a fantastic family. And all of you that are here today that have participated and helped with this luncheon and this ministry, you know, I see a lot of faces. I don't know all of you, but I remember your faces. And then when you get up to start talking, I remember some of those things as well. And I just think that it's what a blessing. You know, I know Jack was very key about finishing this room and having the church continue to grow, and it has grown and it's really prospered. It's got a wonderful history over all the years, for sure. And I just encourage you to remember the way he did things and all that. And what because there are a lot of men, you know, as Paul said, he had hundreds of copies, and he had those, and he would bring those to all the different meetings and give them out when somebody would talk. And he had a Bible study group in the second hour, which we used to do 20 years ago, and we would talk about that. And he'd talk about his ministry when he went to the Holy Land, and he always wanted me to go with him sometime. We just never quite got to be able to do that. But he was a great man. He loved the water, he loved his family, he loved his kids, and he certainly brought all of you up right. There's no doubt about that. One last thing I want to share with you. My wife and I and some of the other Gideons, well, I'm a Gideon too, sorry, but we would go over to see Jack at his house, you know, as he was failing. And the thing that I'm going to remember the most about this is, this was about 1.5 years ago. Susan was dealing with her leukemia, and things were tough. And it was great to see and hear that she's in total remission now. So that's a real blessing for sure. And Joan, as I said, looking after Jack and looking after the family and looking after her mother, sainthood, definitely, Joan. I'm just sorry some of the other original job seekers didn't come. You know, everybody's got issues sometimes and they can't come. I know George Pilkington wanted to be here, but he's running an election poll, and I hope he gets everybody to vote the right way, because Lord knows the country needs it, for sure. But we were, about 1 year ago, I guess it was, we went over, Sis and I went over to visit with Jack and his family, and we were all sitting around. We were there for probably 1.5 hours or 2 hours, and Jack was just sitting there, and he never said a word. He would look at us from time to time. And I said, well, you know, we need to go. And Jack was sitting on my right, and Joan was a little bit to my left, and her mom and some of her other members of her family were there. And I said, well, let's stand up and we'll pray, and I'll lead us in prayer. So we all stood up and held each other's hand. And Jack grasped my right hand with his left hand, and he said, he just gave me a good hard squeeze. And he started praying. And I mean, he was so lucid. I will never, ever forget that. He prayed for about 2 minutes, and then we went around to the left, clockwise. And I prayed, and several other members there. And that was a real blessing, because I just can't tell you what that meant to me. And knowing that he was like that. And I mean, you know, there are moments when you're lucid. Even those of us that can still think once in a while, we're not too lucid some of the time. But that was really special, and I really admire your family and what you've meant to thousands. I mean, there have been hundreds of thousands of people, well, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of people that come through these various job ministries, and a lot of those people know and love Jack, and even though they weren't here, they're certainly in his mind. And so I think that's a wonderful thing, and as you, as the members of the family, you have an awesome legacy to live up to, and I hope you will. That's what I'd like to say. Thank you. God bless you all.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say something. I might still be Rock, better known as Rock around here. Jack and I met many years ago and had some great times together. We used to meet, he and I, every week and go over the Bible and go over different things of the church, trying to make it better. And I remember so many times when I would stand up there leading the music and him trying to sing with us and enjoying all of that. I remember him sitting on my lap as Santa Claus, big smile on his face. I also remember when he was at home and going through his time, that a lot of times he didn't know who anybody was, but for some reason when I walked into the room and said, Jack, he tried to open his eyes. And I think one of the girls told me that just before he died, somebody mentioned my name, and his eyes were closed, but you could see him trying to open his eyes. But God blessed him, God strengthened him, and through it all, he was a wonderful, wonderful man. And I believe if ever there was a man of God, he is a man of God. Thank you.
I'm Ann Garvin. Jim mentioned earlier that Jack married the two of us. And I'll never forget our ceremony because we had two pastors. It took two to marry us. Jack was one of them. And we had told him, to start with, that we were getting married in, not around here, we were getting married in North Carolina at a little place called Pretty Place Chapel up on the border of North and South Carolina. And we told him how long the drive was, and that, you know, and he had said, yeah, I'll be there, I'll be there. And so we all gathered, and when Jim, he knew of this place, and I was saying, nobody's going to come. It's so far away, but we had this wonderful celebration and had lots of dear friends to join us in that celebration. But when Jack got up to welcome everyone, he made a comment, and I wish I could remember his words exactly because they were precious. But he said something to the effect of, we knew we were coming a distance, but did you know you were coming to the top of this mountain? And I can't help but think today he's sitting on the top of the mountain. Yeah.
Well, I'm Wayne Davis. Some of you know me. You may not have recognized me. I'm taking over Santa Claus from Rock over there. I was a lay leader here from, I think, 1996 through when we moved in 2004, so about 8 years. And there's so many stories, I don't even know where to start, but I'm not going to tell you all of them. But anyway, Jack would take me to a lot of the meetings he would go to, especially the pastor's meeting. But one of the ones I remember the most is the funeral director's meetings. But it was always interesting. I'd never understood some of the statistics they wanted to pull out. They wanted to know what was the death rate in this vicinity. Well, I thought death rate would be 100% over a period of time. Everybody's going to die, right? But I never did understand some of those statistics they were throwing out at the funeral director's meetings. But anyway, I did meet Jack in 1996 at the Job Seekers. So that's where I first came in contact with him. That was probably the lowest point in my whole career. And I was in the medical industry in sales and management for 42 years. So that was a really low period of time for me, and Jack helped me quite a bit mentally to get through that period of time. I do remember a few stories about Mount Eagle. When we were coming over here, we lived in Murfreesboro, so we come over to Mount Eagle to get here. But his family could probably tell more about that experience with the land that they owned up there and the flowers or plant that was found that was, what was it?
It was a weed.
A weed.
A weed, yeah.
But you couldn't cut it down,
No,
right?
it was rare. It was on the endangered species.
All right, endangered species list.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the stories about him pulling a bulldozer down that mountain was always interesting. I can't even imagine that myself. That's why they had a runaway truck lane now. Anyway, Jack meant a lot to me. It's hard to express all the things that he did for us when we were here. But he was a great man, and a great man of God, and a great friend, and I miss him much. I do appreciate Facebook now because Jill messaged me about Jack's death. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know. So, thanks very much, Jill.
If you have a story of something, you know, poignant that you want to share, write it down and give it to the family. I mean, there's a lot of memories of Jack that we don't want to lose along the way. There's you know, something really special about holding on to those. And I think when we talk about legacy, you know, there's a scripture about how mercy triumphs over judgment. Mercy triumphs over judgment. You know, and there's a lot of churches and everything that they really focus on excellence, right? And things precision. You know, we start right here, we get done there, and they want the music. They want, you know, message, everything to be just precise. This is not such a church. And the reason is because there's a higher priority here. And that higher priority is mercy and forgiveness and love. And see, that was certainly a culture that has existed, that Jack has brought with him everywhere he's been. And here's the thing, there's people that walk through these doors now who will never get to hear Jack preach, never get to sit in one of his Bible studies. I didn't get to hear him preach. I heard things on tape. I didn't get to sit with him in Bible study. But I did get to know Jack. And even for the people who will never get to know Jack and just sort of hear about him as a memory, they will benefit from Jack. Because of what happened here in that culture, which is a bunch of crazy people walking around hugging and kissing for minutes on Sunday morning. You know what? It's not neat and orderly. It's a little messy. And it is wonderful. But it's who we are and what we've given. And so those people who may never meet Jack or shake his hand, they're going to be blessed by him. Because what he started there is not going to end now. And it would be our profound prayer that it doesn't end with us either. And that continues. I'll tell you when it's going to end. When the Lord returns. Amen. And it may be sooner rather than later. Let us pray. Lord, we must give you thanks. We must celebrate in this time of grief and sorrow and loss. It's also a time where we proclaim victory. And Lord, we all know so many different aspects and facets of Jack, and I just thank you for the sharing. I thank you for the faithfulness of his friends and his family. And Lord, especially what a testimony it is for the people who have come so far away from so many years beyond that he has touched. Lord, may this not end here and now, but may this love and this mercy and forgiveness and second and third and 33rd chances continue until you're coming back for your own. And at that time, Lord, we will be reunited with our brother Jack. And so for all these things, we give you thanks in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen. Amen. Thank you for being here.